Today's a good one. Block cycles. Classic. We're going to use the drawings from Richard Williams. And today, we're just going to lay in those key poses. Going to keep everything nice and light with sketches. We're going to use this drawing from Richard Williams' Animator Survival Kit as our reference. So let's begin. The first thing that we're going to want to do is make some guides for ourselves so that we can make sure that as the character moves up and down through the different poses that we can keep the shapes consistent. That's one of the animation principles, after all, that we're looking for, keeping our drawings solid. So we've made a new layer here using the sketch pencil, and I'm putting in a guideline for the head and for the hips. And I think that's probably all that we're going to need. So the first thing I'm doing here is just drawing in on the first pose, drawing in where the head's going to go, where the hips are going to go, and then this top circle up here would be the shoulders. And then if you just connect those two lines, then you pretty much have the torso. And all you have to do is grab your eraser tool and erase in between. And remember, these are just sketches for now, so nothing has to be perfect. And one way to work is to just kind of do the head and torso part first for all the poses. Make sure that you have that all set. So that's kind of how I'm doing things here. I'm skipping 3 frames in between. So my frame rate is going to be 24 frames per second. And there are 4 poses before the cycle on one side repeats. So that puts me at 3 frames in between to get to the end. So as you can see, what I'm doing for each pose is I'm moving the head and the torso together just in slight increments. So on the down pose, it'll go slightly below the lines, and then in the passing pose, it'll be slightly up, and then the up pose, it'll be even at its highest point. And then I'm just going to remind myself here with some quick labels to put all those things in there so I know exactly what pose that I'm working on, and then that part is done. Moving on to the legs now, I can work my way through each of the poses. Notice that I'm doing the same kind of circle idea. This will help me keep the shape of the legs consistent, and all I have to do then is draw the circles and connect the lines. Notice also that the circles are getting gradually smaller as we move down the leg. For the contact pose, that right leg is going to be fully extended, and the heel is going to be just making contact with the ground. And I'm just making some slight adjustments there. And now I'm working on the back leg. Okay, trying to keep it roughly at the same height. But this back circle is going to need to be slightly higher because it's not a straight line, because the toe is bent to show the push off there. So that is the contact pose, pretty much in good shape. Now all I just have to do is erase the circles and make sure that I'm indicating very clearly which is the right leg and which is the left leg. Okay, and that'll make it so the contact pose is pretty much done. Moving on to the down pose. And see, this is why it was great to do the torso first. Now we can know exactly where that hip socket's going to go. And I have onion skinning turned on so that I can see the movement. The 2 circles that indicate the knees are coming gradually closer together. And since we're doing the animation style, which is basically as if the character were on a treadmill, we have to make sure that the foot that comes down there in the front is moving towards the back with each new pose, and the other one is moving forward. Okay, so we have that push off the ground, And then all we're doing, once again, is just connecting the circles with lines and then erasing the circles on the in-between. Okay, again, try and make it clear which one is the right leg and which one is the left leg. Okay, and then you can go back and forth and check just to see how it's looking going from pose to pose. And then pretty much the down is done. Moving on to the passing position. This is where we call it the passing position because one leg basically passes the other as one moves forward and the other one moves back. So it's the right leg that is moving backwards right now. So we're just always following that same procedure. Slightly smaller circle, connect with lines, slightly smaller circle, connect with lines. And on the passing pose, that right leg is pretty much straight up and down, and that left leg, the knee is going to be passing the other knee as the leg moves forward. So just get that knee circle in there, get the ankle circle in there. And in this case, I think I had a sense that the bottom leg was too long, that he was all of a sudden stretching out. And that's where solid drawing comes into play. You want to try and keep the volume consistent. And in this case, we're not doing any kind of squash and stretch through here. So you really want to make sure that length stays the same. And then, like usual, erase the stuff in the middle, check the pose. It's looking good. You can start to see the movement already. So now we're on the last pose for the legs, which is the up position. Now the only way that we could get the up to work is if that back leg is starting to come off the ground. Okay. So you'll see we're just going to get a slight angle towards the back as the foot, remember that we're imagining is working on a treadmill, is starting to come up off the ground there. And then we're just connecting those lines together. Okay, and I'm kind of slightly changing my mind here in terms of where the knee is going to go. I want more of that straight line between hip to knee to ankle. So I'm just going to make that adjustment here. And then the other knee, the left knee, is coming forward with that foot off the ground. Now, human beings, when we walk, we don't really lift our leg all that much. You notice how we're kind of barely clearing there. That's why we trip sometimes, because we're trying to conserve energy and effort. We're only lifting our feet up as high as we need to in order to clear the ground, but nothing more. Okay, and then we test out back and forth. We're looking good. We basically have the poses. Onward to the arms. We're going to follow a very similar method to what we did with the legs, going back to the contact pose. And again, we're just drawing circles. The shoulder is just slightly smaller than the top of the torso. The elbow is slightly smaller than the shoulder. The wrist slightly smaller than the elbow. That's what allows us to work our way down, and then we just connect with lines. This should be a familiar process to you by now, and then all we have to do is keep the shapes as consistent as we can and similar to each other. And don't be afraid to redraw, but they don't have to be perfect. These are just sketches. We'll do finished line art in our next exercise. And as you can see, I'm kind of making different decisions based on how fast I think things are swinging through. And I think that looks pretty good. So now just erase to make sure that it's clear which is the right arm and which is the left. One thing to remember if you ever get confused is that on a basic, or what we sometimes call a vanilla walk, the arms and the legs are always going to be opposing each other. You can try that out in your own walk. If you just walk around and pay attention to how you walk, in order to stay in balance, when the right leg is forward, the right arm has to be back, and vice versa. When the left leg is back, the left arm is going to be forward. If you put the right arm forward when the right leg is forward, then you're going to be off balance. You're going to be wobbling side to side, and that's not going to lead to good smooth movement. Again, you can see I'm really second guessing myself a lot on where this arm is going to go. I'm trying to pay attention to arcs, right? As the wrist is swinging through, I want a nice smooth arc. You'll also notice that I'm breaking the wrist, right? So like what I'm trying to achieve is this sense of a really casual swing as the arm moves forward. Okay, so now we're on the down pose. The thing to remember about the down pose in terms of the arms, this is where the arms are going to be at their greatest distance apart from each other. Now it's a little bit exaggerated here when we just do a normal casual walk. We're not quite swinging our arms this wide, but it's good practice for a walk cycle. The rule still applies. Even if you're just swinging your arms just a little bit, on the down pose is when they will be at their furthest point apart. So there we go. Get the wrist and the hand in there. And then do our typical erasing thing, making it clear which one is the right and which one is the left. Moving on to the passing pose. Always starting with the shoulder here. And again, I'm really liking the fact that we did the torso drawings first when it was nice and simple and clear. So now there should be never any doubt where the shoulder goes. Okay, on the passing pose, the right arm here is going to be almost straight up and down. It's a bad silhouette, but it's kind of where things are going to have to go to get that smooth, swift movement. Just like with with the bouncing ball at the top of the top of the arc is the equivalent of where the arms are on either side. But at this point, the arm is moving really fast, swinging through. It's at its fastest acceleration right through there. So you definitely want to get that thing hauling. And it won't necessarily look great yet with just these poses, but once we do the in-betweens in the future, then it'll all look nice and smooth. Okay, we're almost done here with we're on to the up now. And I think it's a really good idea just to kind of keep having the Richard Williams drawings close at hand, so there's never any doubt where the arms should go, where the legs should go, how much it should be bent. It's all there. And then you test it out and you're good to go. All right, so now it's really just a matter of copying and pasting. You have right after the up, you have another contact, and then you have another down, and then another passing, and then another up, all with 3 frames apart. So you can just copy and paste those, just like you saw there. And then the only trick to remember is that you have to now erase the lines, because when it was on one pose, when it was in the back, then it moves to the front. Okay, so you can see what I'm doing here is just taking the copied drawings and reversing the arms. That's all that's happening here. We're switching places. Okay, so whereas before the right arm was in that position. Now we're erasing and switching the arms. Okay, and I'm doing the arms first because I think it's a little bit easier to tell. And then I'll do the same thing with the legs in just a bit. Just making some few adjustments here for the sake of my clarity later on. And this is a drawing where we're going to have to actually do some redrawing because we couldn't see that one from the other side. That part was blocked. I think we only saw like the tip of the hand from the other side. Okay. Okay, now we're moving on towards the legs. Again, we're just kind of switching right leg and left leg in terms of the drawings. Working our way through each pose. And we're on the final up before the whole sequence repeats, and it would loop around after frame 31 and go all the way back to the beginning. Okay, so playing it at speed, it's a little hard to see right now, but there's a definite hitch in the arms that I want to fix, and it might mean some redrawing. You can kind of see it right there where there's very little movement from one pose to another. And unfortunately, that's something that I should have caught a long time ago before I copied the poses over, because now I'm just going to have to like redraw things twice. And I'm really, if you remember when I first drew that, that was the part where I went back and forth a lot to try and get things right. So got to do a little damage control. I'm just going to leave this in the video just to show you that, you know, even with a lot of preparation and working from a good reference drawing, you can still sometimes make mistakes. And right, you can see the gap right there is huge. It's too much there. So that's what we're trying to fix. And sometimes you really just do have to go back to the drawing board. I think this is how I originally drew it, and then I doubted myself. So I'm going back to what I was doing originally, which happens. It's okay. That's the great thing about digital art, right? You just grab that eraser tool and start again. And again, remember these are also sketches, so it's okay to make mistakes and just have things loosely in there. Okay, just trying to clarify which is in front, which is in the back. And now we have a much better result. I think we're going to do one last thing before we call it good, and that is just to really sink home the idea of which is the left side and which is the right side. So I'm just going to take a simple brush tool, and I'm going to use this rusty color just to really color in the left side, the left arm and the left leg, so you can see, and so that I can see later on when I'm doing my finished drawings, so that I always remember which one's which. It takes a little bit of time, but I think it's worth it. And if you remember on the original Richard Williams drawings, he does that too. Not only does he draw each pose in a different color, but he colors in the legs and arms on the backside, which is it's just for clarity. And it doesn't take that long to do. It's worth it. Okay, finally on the last one. Cool. And then you can just play your animation, see what you got. Got a nice little spring in the step, bouncing up and down. It's looking really good. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything that is really bugging me. Notice how like the arms, snap at the end, which is, I definitely like that. And we're good to go for this lesson. All right, good luck on yours.